You're listening to the Reality of It All podcast, candid conversations about today's hot topics. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. All right. We are talking about intuitive eating and, just that anti-diet mentality. We are so hung up on diet, weight loss, the number on the scale, all that kind of stuff. And, the diet industry is $1 billion industry that is just raking in gobs of money because it plays on our flaws and our self-esteem and our self-worth. With me today is Elizabeth Harris. She is a dietitian and intuitive eating counselor, and she is going to help us figure out our body signals so that we can be more in tune with our bodies and learn to eat healthier and better, as opposed to starving ourselves and diet pills and all that good stuff. So Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. This is a great topic. It's one that's near and dear to my heart because I am a professional dieter. Mm-hmm. I've done it, just about all of it, right down to the HCG 500 calorie with the shots. So I've done it all.
Oh my goodness. Yes, you're not alone.
So this is a topic that I can talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned something in the green room before we started recording that I want to kind of start out with. And you talked about being weight neutral?
Yeah, taking a weight neutral approach to health.
A weight neutral approach to health. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So basically it means that most of the way that we approach healthcare in our society now is we consider it a weight normative approach. And that means for so many different issues, we make kind of weight the center of what care is centered around in terms of focusing on weight loss and kind of giving people the message that, being in a higher weight body is a problem in and of itself. And what I work from, and many other kind of professionals also, from a health at every size approach and an anti-diet approach. And what that means is we take a weight neutral approach. And essentially we don't focus on weight in our approach to enhancing health and well-being. We focus on behaviors themselves. So instead of trying to, do weigh-ins and put the focus on calories and the number on the scale, we put the focus on actual health promoting behaviors. So can you add more fiber to your diet? Are you eating, plenty of fruits and vegetables? How are you moving your body? Like, what's your stress management like? And really trying to tease apart and separating health from weight, because that message that, being in a higher weight body, causes certain health conditions is not necessarily accurate or the full story. There's lots of times many confounding variables that can muddy the picture. And it's almost like a reductionist view of looking at it that isn't really helping anyone, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many other people,
right,
who work from this standpoint.
That makes sense. And I like that because we put way too much focus on that number that's on the scale. And that number that's on the scale, it's a lie. It's not an accurate measurement of who we are, where we are, and what our health is. And I mean, I've heard of, like bodybuilders who, because of the number on their scale, it actually puts them into the obese category. Mm-hmm. And they have like 5% body fat. There's no way they're obese, but our medical industry and the weight loss industry, they just put so much focus on that number on the scale. We become obsessed with it.
Yeah, we become obsessed with it at the expense of actually kind of how we're caring for ourselves, how we're treating for ourselves, and that focus on weight. It's not really helpful if someone goes into the doctor, let's say, and immediately, no matter what they go in for, if they start getting a on weight and how they need to lose weight, it's like, one, it's a deterrent for people to actually go into the doctor because they don't want to get that kind of lecture, right? And it's not helpful to them. And there's also a lot of shame involved in that approach of pathologizing body size, and it's not necessary and not helpful to kind of giving people, care that would be helpful. And BMI it's just flawed. I mean, there's so many reasons why it's flawed, really, but it doesn't take into account so many different factors, gender, diverse populations, distribution of fat on the body. It doesn't take into account just so many things. And so to use it as a proxy, and there's lots of research to show that what we've been told about it isn't necessarily what's accurate anyway, in terms of measuring a person's health and well-being. And also, a lot of people don't know I always get the time frame mixed up, but I think it was around the early 2000s or late 1990s. The category or the criteria for BMI that's associated with different, quote unquote, underweight, normal weight, obesity, and on, it was actually lowered by 5 percentage points. So overnight, 30 million people who previously were considered normal weight were all of a sudden considered or classified as overweight, according to the BMI. Well, nothing changed about their bodies overnight, right? They changed the measurement.
Right.
And then that became, a way of essentially scaring people and making them think that they weren't healthy. And a lot of that they did that to bring it more in line with World Health Organization standards, but that was based on a report that was funded by kind of pharmaceutical companies who sold weight loss drugs. So not an independent type of report.
I
think people don't know stories like that, and yet feel so much kind of guilt or shame or anxiety when they're told, oh, here's where you hit on the BMI scale, without realizing it doesn't really measure what we think it measures.
Right. Yeah. It's crazy how, and I think, and I'm not 100% sure, but I really think that a lot of this is specific to America and the American culture. I believe that we are probably the most unhealthiest overweight country there is. And again, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's what has been put out there.
So I mean, again, I'm trying to separate weight from health, but and different countries for sure have different, issues. And I'm not necessarily an expert in all of those other countries, but diet culture in our American culture is prevalent. And it is everything from kind of those messages you get when you go into the doctor to kind of all the fad diets and quick fixes, and the messages that, our bodies aren't good enough just as they are, and that you need to quote unquote fix them and change them in order to kind of be happier, be healthier, be more loved, belong, fit better, kind of all of the things. Mm-hmm. It's kind of all that messaging we get that equates kind of thinness with, health and moral virtue and all these things. Christy Harrison in her book, Anti-Diet, has a great definition of diet culture. But it's everywhere. It's the conversation when you go to lunch with a girlfriend and they're kind of, oh my gosh, everyone's talking about what diet they're on and what foods they can or can't eat, or, oh my goodness, you're going to eat that. If I ate that, I would look like XXX, XYZ, or it's just all the messages, all the advertising, all the everything that makes us feel badly about and in our bodies, and that gives us the idea that they all have to fit a certain mold in order to be acceptable. And it's harmful and it's not true. And you don't have to focus on that. I would say kind of focusing on that, on dieting, like you described yourself as sort of a professional dieter, which so much compassion for that, because again, that's the culture we live in that gives us the messaging, right? And kind of seeds the insecurities you mentioned at the top. Diet culture is a $72 billion industry that essentially like seeds insecurities and then profits off of them without really helping anyone along the way, just kind of making the problem worse.
Yeah. It's crazy. So going to or switching to a weight neutral approach. What does that look like? We throw away our scales. We don't even worry about what that number looks like anymore. I mean, how does that work?
Yeah. So everyone, the journey looks different for everyone. But yes, ultimately, what we're trying to do is to remove the focus off of weight and put the focus on behaviors, because weight isn't a behavior. You can't do weight, right? You can do eating more fruits and vegetables or moving your body more or adding lean protein in, right? Or whole grains. Like those are things you can do. You can't do weight. It's not within our control the way that we've been taught. Many people have the experience of sort of doing all the things that the diet tells you to do, right? Eating less, moving more, and maybe the scale moves for a time or maybe it doesn't, but it doesn't stay there and it gets harder and harder. That's because we can't control our weight in the way we've been told. There's so many biological mechanisms that are outside of our conscious control that go into, including genetics, right? That go into determining a person's weight set range. So when people come in to work with me, and I typically do work with chronic dieters, we're looking to kind of clear away all the diet noise. So understand what diet culture is, how it impacts you, where it shows up in your life, how it makes you feel, and then learn the steps to push back on it, to kind of separate yourself from it, clear away all of that diet noise about eating, the kind of good food versus bad food, the counting calories, the portion sizes, the scale, the numbers, we're trying to get away from all of that external data, because all of that is happening outside of your body, right? The scales outside your body, calories are outside your body, good and bad food lists, meal plans, those are all outside your body. And instead, we're trying to bring your focus inside your body. So really kind of accepting all foods can be part of a healthy diet. Absolutely. And we want people to be able to eat and enjoy all foods without guilt, without stress, without overwhelm, without anxiety, but do it in a way that is in tune with your body. So in tune to your hunger cues, your fullness cues, your digestion, how foods make you feel, in alignment with sort of the values that you have as an individual, health values that are important to you, because yours will probably be different than mine and different from every other person who's listening to this podcast. So it's really about kind of honoring that space for everyone, like figuring out what's important to you. And then how can we help you get there by focusing on the things that are within your control? And that is kind of what you do, not the number on the scale. And if it's, our bodies all have a place where they want to be, essentially. And dieting is often trying to get you to battle that place, right? To sort of subvert it, which may or may not work for a time, but the research shows that the far and away, the vast majority of people who go on a diet gain all the weight back, and oftentimes more than they lost to begin with. And that's not because they're doing something wrong. It's not because they don't have enough willpower or enough self-control. It's because there's all this biology happening that is, impacting your metabolism and all of those things. So we try to kind of treat everyone respectfully as an individual in accordance with what their values are and help them focus on actual behaviors.
I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you and I'm like, I don't know, what does a world look like where I am not weighing my foods and measuring my or tracking my calories, and I just don't know what that looks like, other than when I'm not doing that, that means I'm binging. So
that's such an important point. But what I would help people understand, and what we try to help people understand with intuitive eating, is that That's kind of an all or nothing approach, right? There's either the all approach of I'm restricting and monitoring and counting and measuring and tracking so rigidly, or I'm kind of doing none of that. And so I feel like I'm overeating and binging. And I describe it, you can see the visual. People who are listening will have to kind of imagine it a little bit, but it's a pendulum essentially. And so when you pull back the pendulum over here into the restriction place, if you just think about it, what happens when you let a pendulum go? It doesn't just come here in the middle, right? It swings all the way out over here. That's where you get the I'm binging, I'm overeating, I'm having massive cravings phase. Right. And so if we cannot, and then typically what happens is you sit here for a while, right, in that binging, overeating, craving place, and you can't take it anymore. And so you pull the pendulum back and go on another diet. And you're just essentially constantly swinging back and forth. And it doesn't feel good. And it's frustrating. And in the process, we start to think, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me. Why can't I figure this out, without realizing the restriction, the dieting part is actually the quote unquote problem, not the person. And so by rejecting that dieting approach, by saying, we know through the research that's only setting you up for this restricting, binging, overeating phase. So we're going to reject that. We're not going to diet at all. We're not going to focus on weight loss at all. We're going to focus on having a happy, healthy relationship with food, a happy, healthy relationship with your body, and helping you learn how to eat in attunement, find that happy, healthy, consistent place in the middle ground. And when we do, trust that your body is going to go where it needs to go, where it's meant to go, because really an individual's weight set range is that place. You don't have to fight that hard to maintain it. It's the place your body lands naturally when you're eating in attunement, when you have a gentle nod to honoring your health and well-being, when you're moving, regularly, but it's enjoyable. It's not punishing. It's not battling. It's not, I have to, go spend an hour on the treadmill today, or I cannot maintain this weight. Your body does a really good job of, just like all the other processes in your body where it maintains homeostasis, your oxygen levels, your blood levels, right, your kind of electrolyte levels, all the things. It's like a thermostat. And our bodies are really good at managing that thermostat for our weight too, when we let them do what they need to do. And we're caring for ourselves in, a holistically healthful way without getting on that pendulum. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And, you talked about having a healthy relationship with our food and with our bodies. And, as a yo-yo dieter, I can tell you that I've had years, a lifetime really, of self-loathing. Mm-hmm. And also a very unhealthy relationship with food. I view food as the enemy.
Yeah.
It's an enemy. It's working against me. It's, I either have to eat the salad or, whatever, but, and it's such an unhealthy mentality. And I recognize that and I realize that, and I'm trying to shift that, but you can't have a healthy relationship with food and with yourself while you're in the diet mentality.
Yeah, you really can't. And I have, that's so vulnerable and honest of you to share. And I have so much kind of compassion.
Thank you.
To put your way, because it's the world we live in that sets us up to feel that way.
Yeah.
But it will be really, really difficult to kind of heal your relationship with food in your body while you're kind of stuck in diet culture, stuck in the dieting part. And so kind of, I think of a person's relationship with food in their body as a foundation, right? And just like the foundation in your house, if you're trying to build your house on a foundation that has cracks in it, it's not going to be a sound, solid structure. To me, that's what happens when people are trying to make health and wellness changes on a foundation of a relationship with food and their body that needs healing. It's going to be nearly impossible to find that consistent, happy middle ground place that is sustainable and enjoyable and makes you feel good, without going a little bit deeper and sort of addressing the foundation of how you relate to food and how you relate to your body. And there's a tremendous amount of unlearning involved in that. So I describe kind of when I'm working with people, it's almost like 4 pillars of a process that we go through. The first process is sort of like unlearning the dieting approach, unlearning virtually so much of what we've been taught to believe about how we look at food and how we approach it. And, even something as simple as not classifying foods as healthy and unhealthy, because all that does is set up kind of a framework where you're likely to feel guilt about eating certain foods, right? Or shame, or certain foods are going to be more or less appealing than other foods. So we're trying to get them on a neutral playing field. But so on the one hand, we're like unlearning that dieting aspect of food. On the other hand, we're rebuilding that body connection, because dieting disrupts you from that innate connection with your body. We're actually all born intuitive eaters. When we're born, when you have an infant, they cry when they're hungry, you feed them, they turn away when they're full, right? No one's counting their calories, really. It's very difficult to overfeed a baby. When they get full, they'll simply turn away and they won't take any more food. And they'll sure as heck let you know again when they get hungry, when their stomach empties. Exactly. The same is true of infants and toddlers. They kind of innately know when they're hungry, when they're full, and which foods they enjoy and don't enjoy. If you've ever fed a baby, I mean, you can see it written all over their face, what they think of the flavor, right? Yep. And we don't judge that. That's just, they like it, they don't like it. But what happens is we start getting all these messages in childhood about food that make it not be in that neutral place anymore. And they almost always come from a well-meaning place, a loving place of the caregivers trying to support and nourish and nurture that child. But it takes us away from that neutral place, and then also starts to disconnect us from our bodies. So for example, if you're told you have to be in the clean plate club, which many, many children are, or encouraged to be, that has nothing to do with how hungry or full that child feels, right? Like how much food a person puts on their plate. If you're told that you have to eat, all your broccoli before you can get dessert, well, now you're setting up a situation where dessert is more exciting, more enjoyable, more rewarding than broccoli. And then, then you get a little bit older, you start seeping in the diet culture messages about there's something wrong with our bodies. We need to control them or change or fix them. And calories, points, macros, good foods, bad foods. And every one of those messages is taking us further and further away from our connection with our body. So the second pillar of kind of the work that I do is helping people really reestablish that connection. Learn what hunger feels like in your body, what fullness feels like. Learn how to trust your body's cues again, instead of needing some outside plan to kind of be able to tell you if you're eating right or wrong or enough or too much. And then the third pillar is really where it ties into that weight neutral approach of shifting to self-care. So again, not punishing exercise because you quote unquote have to, it's on the diet, not I have to eat or burn this many calories, but like, how do I want to care for my body? What are the things I can and want to do that will be enjoyable and are health promoting? And then the last pillar is the body image healing, because we do still all live in diet culture, right? We can minimize it dramatically. We can learn alternative views about it that can make us feel more safe, more comfortable in our own bodies. But it's still out there. And there's this message that if you're not comfortable, if you're not confident, if you're not happy enough, if you lose weight, it will solve that. But body image is actually not about a person's body at all. Your body image is about your thoughts and your feelings and your perceptions of your body, and then what you do with them. So in order to feel more confident, more comfortable, more all of those things, you don't actually have to change your body. You have to change your mindset. It's kind of change how you see things and how you think about it. So that's kind of like, I hope I answered your question about what it looks like.
Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you. We've got a couple minutes before we have to wrap up. I was talking to someone the other day, yesterday, and, she had a quote that she said that I had to write down because I was like, oh my God. And she said, if hunger is not the problem, then food is not the solution, because we tend to eat from an emotional standpoint a lot of times especially when we binge, and we're trying to solve a problem with food. And so, if you look at it from that standpoint, am I hungry or am I trying to solve a problem? Am I bored? Am I lonely? Am I upset? Am I, then I think it makes the choices of what we eat and when we eat a little bit clearer.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, that quote, my only hesitancy with that quote is like there could potentially, someone could perceive it as like almost like a little bit of shaming involved if you're eating when you're not hungry. And we recognize in intuitive eating and in my work, it's not the intuitive eating is not the hunger fullness diet, right? Yes, we try to teach you what your hunger cues feel like. We try to teach you what fullness cues feel like, but there's normal eating is sometimes for practical reasons and sometimes for emotional reasons does involve eating at times when you're not hungry. And there's no shame or guilt in that, but you're absolutely right that the principle of intuitive eating is coping with your emotions with kindness. And so sometimes that may mean like, I had a really bad day and I just want a bowl of chocolate ice cream, and that doesn't make me a bad person. It's not going to ruin my health and it's okay. Right. But then hopefully many other times you look at it and think, I had a really bad day. What am I feeling? Like that's what I try to teach people is like, let's zero in. And there's some tools. A quick one that I'll share with you. We call it HALT. So HALT. And it's basically a mindfulness tool where you can pause and ask, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Am I tired? And I usually put an S on the end for halts. Or am I sad or stressed? And once you can figure out like, okay, what am I actually feeling? Then you get to decide with intention how you want to respond. And it may or may not be with food.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that. Elizabeth, thank you so much for coming on and talking with me and sharing this. This has been really, really informative, and it just has me thinking. I've had a lot of these conversations lately and my head has just been spinning about, what life can look like free from the diet mentality. And I'm kind of starting to get that clarity and to get that vision. Yeah. And it looks pretty damn good.
I love it. The way that I describe it is what does it look like? It looks like peace. It looks like food and body peace. You're no longer in a battle. You find peace, and it is truly life-changing and transformative and really empowering. You're still honoring your health and well-being, but in a way that feels good and is doable.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Listeners, I will have Elizabeth's contact information in the show notes. As always, if you go to therealityofitall.com and pull up Elizabeth's episode, her contact information will be there so that you can reach out to her and, have her help you with learning your body, learning your hunger cues, and learning how to just get away from that diet mentality. It's time.
Can I share one tiny thing, which is actually have a free 5-day course. It's called How to Break Up with Dieting for Good.
Perfect.
And anyone who wants to learn more about kind of some of that science behind why diets don't work, the biology that happens, the psychology, intuitive eating is more specifically, we didn't really say, I would welcome anyone to check that out.
Great. And that's on your website?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll make sure I get the link. Yeah. I'll get the link. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. So great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Listeners, as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll talk to you in the next show. That's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. Be sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and TikTok.